All right, so now it's going.
All right.
Let's see.
Did you tweet it?
Oh, I didn't. Well, I didn't even look to see if. Yeah, we're here on Facebook.
I don't see it on here.
Well, I'd have to go. I can't. I guess I can tweet it from YouTube. We're just not in a minute. Nobody's on anyway.
Yeah.
You already shared it from YouTube.
Oh, I don't even know.
There's one viewer on YouTube. Keep going just shortly. It's live. So. Keep going just shortly.
Did you turn that volume on?
Keep going just shortly. I just did.
We'll go ahead. Might as well
All
move
right.
that picture.
Or start with our Ides stuff, and then I'll say who he is.
Okay. Oh, you want to move the picture though while we tell them? Hey guys,
Hello.
we're back for another Ides. That's not on the Ides again. The Ides was the 13th or the
You were out of
15th.
town. I was coming in town.
We hated that because the Ides was actually on Friday the 13th.
That would have been
perfect. But for those of you that don't know us, I'm Yvonne Burton. This is my brother Lewis Everett, and we've been doing the Ides for 4 years now.
A little over 3 for
A little
sure.
over 3.
Well, it's almost episode 40. Yeah, a little over 3.
And the Ides are a positive, good thing that used to be celebrated at the beginning. It was like the beginning of the new year, and it was a good thing. And you can go back and watch our early videos to kind of get a sense of how we started. But anyway, to make a long story short, we're going to be talking about the Nazis.
Operation Overcast, in which a lot of you would probably know it as Operation Paperclip.
Right, because they changed the name.
Supposedly they wanted to change the name because they realized they needed to kind of hide what they were doing a little bit better and not call it. I don't know why Overcast or Paperclip would be any better.
Right.
I saw another line on it that said they chose Paperclip because that's what they denoted when the CIA, at the time the OSS, had all these files on all these former Nazi scientists and doctors and stuff, that they used paperclips to denote just how nefarious these people were.
Oh.
That was kind of and I'm like,
I
don't even know if I believe that either. So
Yeah,
who
who
knows
knows?
why they come up with these names.
And, the one thing that we've learned in the last few years is that everything that they're telling us a lie and everything that they have told us is a lie. And so we're just kind of looking at history through a whole different lens. And we're not saying that what we're saying is right. We're just questioning everything and bringing to you things that,
Things that you
kind
may
of
not have heard, or
they make you go,
some of it we didn't know until today, which is the case a lot of times.
Right. And so we don't really we didn't take a lot of notes. We're just kind of, it's just an idea about the World War II and the Nazis, that did we actually win?
Did the U.S. come out as the main superpower of the world, truly? And we've done scopes about, Rome never fell, and
Right.
it kind of ties into that stuff too. It's like there's maybe a group of people that always last no matter what happens, and they just take on new identities, new forms.
They disperse. And so we're going to talk about that operation, and then talk about a few people, some of our world leaders, some celebrities,
Yeah.
that have ancestors that are Nazis.
You know, because what's in vogue, especially since Trump was elected back in 2016, and you know, to be honest, me and Von aren't on total same page with it, but I'm past Trump too. But everybody
I'm not, but
everybody became, you know, everybody's a Nazi. If you were this, so everybody became a Nazi. So now nobody's a Nazi. So
right.
we just looked at, you know, that's kind of a,
You know, it's kind of become like the race card. They're overusing it. You know, there was some trolls in my replies today, in my on Twitter, and they were calling me KKK and Nazi, and you know,
off of a short post, it's the reaction seemed over the top for what you posted, and it was just like, I mean, these people are angry and they want you done.
Right? Yeah, they were
said, you've been
reporting
reported
me,
for hate speech,
and I don't know. They still could get me banned. You know, it doesn't sometimes always happen automatically. Like,
yeah.
So I don't care anymore. You know, it is what it is. But so we were going to talk about that, and then something I stumbled upon about
POW camps.
the POW camps, but also an epidemic that was going on during the Holocaust, which seems awfully similar to what's going on now. So we'll just get started with the Operation Paperclip.
And Operation Paperclip, as a lot of people already know, was a plan by the U.S. intelligence services, and the Army was participating in this a lot too, because they were gathering up all these scientists and chemists and doctors and stuff from Nazi Germany as it was falling. They were starting this in like 44, after the D-Day invasion. So they were already planning on trying to grab these people. And the story is that they wanted to keep all this technology and knowledge out of the hands of the Soviets. Now, the Soviets were our allies, I say in quotes, throughout this whole war. And the story is they wanted to protect the technology. And then you get into the von Brauns, and I didn't realize that there was more than just Werner von Braun, who ended up becoming the head of NASA.
Did you tell them who von Braun is?
That's what I'm saying. Werner von Braun, he became the head of NASA.
He was the head of NASA when we went to the moon in 1969.
Yeah. But he runs the V2 rocket program for Hitler, and that was attacking Britain during the war. And,
right. He wasn't just some innocent.
And at the place, what was it called? The Mittelwerk?
Mittelwerk.
Because they dug these tunnels at a mountain so that it couldn't be hit by Allied bombers.
Right.
And used thousands of slave labor, and were constantly ordering more because they were working them to death. And so this guy was directly responsible for a lot of deaths. And then you get his brother, Magnus von Braun. I don't know. He's like about 10 years younger, but I don't know. I think maybe he was behind the scenes
more sinister figure than even
his brothers.
Werner.
And one thing I found and this could be a rabbit hole by itself, is Magnus von Braun is in 44 sometime, and wherever they're holed up at the Middle Works, they planned on surrendering to the Americans. They wanted to and I can understand a lot of people wanted to be surrendered to the Americans instead of the Soviets, because by that time they had a pretty good inkling of which one would treat them better. But they also put in the story that they surrendered to the Americans because they wanted the technology that they had in their minds and what they invented with these rockets and stuff. They wanted it to go to a country that followed the Bible.
Right.
And they were just altruistic and wanted it to go to a good, they wanted their mad stuff to go to a good home, I guess is what you could say.
Yeah.
And so Magnus von Braun, which was the guy I had up earlier, this guy, and did you show him Werner? No, I haven't shown them that yet. So here's Werner, and this is his glamour photo, probably in the late 50s, late 60s, and the space program starting to go because of John F. Kennedy, which we'll get to him shortly too.
Yeah.
But Magnus von Braun gets on a bicycle, and they actually have the actual bicycle in a museum somewhere, and I can't remember where that was. But he rides a bicycle down to an American sentry post somewhere, and I guess somewhere in Germany, where the Americans are getting close, and surrenders. And when he surrenders himself, he's basically saying, "Hey, I'm this guy. My brother invented the V2 rocket," or something like that. So they're trying to already lay out, "Hey, you need us as much as we need you."
Right.
And so they end up
That's just the cover story America tells. So,
Oh,
truth
yeah.
be told, America recruited them, went and saw,
Yeah.
these guys have this
They
knowledge.
probably
We
had
need to
a
get these
they
guys.
probably had a good idea, a good hard list of people they wanted to try to grab.
Right.
And so Magnus, when I was looking at Magnus von Braun, I kept seeing, no matter where I went, Wikipedia or different blogs and stuff, it kept saying that he arrived in America on the SS Argentina. And that just kind of struck me because I'm just like, why do they keep saying what ship he came in on? I never, why the focus? So I looked into the SS Argentina. It had some kind of curious passengers too. One being John F. Kennedy.
That's interesting.
In 1941, which it was before America is in the war, but the war's been going on for almost 2 years. And at this time, this ship did regular service between the east coast of the U.S. and went down to Argentina and Brazil and stuff. And I guess at this time, the best I could find out is he was helping his dad, Joe Kennedy, who was the former U.S. ambassador to Britain, to write his memoir. And before that, Kennedy had some interesting travels, and we'll get back to those too. But then the SS Argentina, when we're in the war, it gets kind of taken over by the U.S. and it's turned into a troop ship, and it transports to Australia, it transports to Africa, it's all over the place. But at the end of the war, it was the first ship to bring back American war brides from Great Britain, and the first load brought back 400 something brides and one war groom, and about 200 kids and a bunch of pregnant women who had married American servicemen. And it was curious to me also that on the passenger list, all the brides were from England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and Malta. That just kind of thrown in there for some reason.
Yeah.
And it just, they wanted the SS Argentina to show up in history. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, also something interesting about Operation Paperclip, or Overcast, which was first named. Most people know about the Nazis that escaped and somehow made it to South America, Argentina, like Dr. Mengele.
A lot, and that's where a lot of the Nazi hunter stuff. They went to Argentina to find these guys.
Right, but most people aren't aware that our own government had a massive operation in, what was it, 1600?
Well, and they admit to 1600. But
they admit to 1600, but we know they always minimized their, what I would call, crimes. Lou and I, after doing research over this, we believe it to be much higher.
Yeah.
So like
and also, every time you look for stuff on the internet about this, it's always about the rocket program and about NASA and things like that, and the moon and all this. But a lot of these guys were chemists and biologists and doctors.
We wonder how many of these people ended up at the National Institute for Health or the CDC,
the Federal Health Service, because our own government did a lot of similar experiments on humans that the Nazis did.
I wrote a blog post on redpillsentinel.com where everybody knows about Tuskegee, but that people don't know about the dozens and dozens of other ones. And one as recently as 2000 to 2010 in 36 states. If you got a blood transfusion, thousands of patients got fake blood, and a lot of people died. A lot of people had heart attacks before it was stopped, but it was unsuspecting and nobody knew. That's like 10 years ago. So what they did in Tuskegee was not, just
a one-off.
A one-off. And
it was normal operating procedure.
A lot of these if you start looking at a lot of these experiments, it's very Hitlerian, and it's very Dr. Mengele, and of course, maybe they learned from us. Who knows? I know they're what was it, eugenics?
Yeah, well,
they got from us.
In America, we also had CIA besides Operation Paperclip. They had Operation Artichoke, which was a precursor to MK Ultra, and a lot of people have heard of MK Ultra. I had not heard of Artichoke until today as well.
All right.
And these are Artichoke. They wanted to see if they could get men to do things that would be against their morals, and again, maybe even become an assassin against, and even do things that would be against their own self-preservation. They were trying all kinds of stuff. And this was in the early 50s.
Right.
And, the early 50s ties in with the 50s would have been right in the middle of Tuskegee. So U.S. was already.
Is that 1951 was when they created the Epidemic Intelligence Service under Dr.
But that's what I'm saying.
Alexander
Langmuir.
Langmuir.
You never want to say
I know, I
that
never
right.
can say it.
But that's what I'm saying is we brought these doctors and scientists over, and CIA immediately started in the early 50s, started doing mind control experiments, which it's admitted you can find this stuff.
Right.
A lot of redacted stuff too, but there's
a lot of destroyed. Most of the MK Ultra stuff was destroyed.
Yeah, but just the stuff that you do know about, heinous as it is.
Right.
But then it's not like it's in an environment of a pristine America and we brought in this poison. It was like America went, oh, we see some fellow, brothers in arms over here. We can work together because they might have learned some stuff on their experiments that we can use. And they definitely used it. I couldn't find anything. You can find stuff about MK Ultra and stuff we did to our own people, our own soldiers and stuff. I couldn't find directly where scientists and biologists and chemists and stuff from Paperclip can be directly tied to CDC or NIH or Federal Health Service,
and we didn't delve deeply into that, and maybe
we didn't go far.
Upon deeper,
but at least
might be able to.
At the very least, there's 1,600 names that you could probably get into and start, but it would take some digging.
Right. I think alarm bells should be going off at you though, with Werner von Braun being the head of not just some scientist but the head of it,
and acclaimed. He definitely, there were other lesser men that worked with him at the same place who got tried for war crimes. One guy had to relinquish his citizenship to keep his pension, but he kept his pension. So, how hard on these guys, even when they did go after him. And I know the Justice Department supposedly was trying to grab some of them.
Right.
And the Army and the CIA would interfere with that and protect these guys. So a lot of them didn't have to face the music at all.
They didn't. And America likes to use World War II as it was a justified war, and we were the righteous victors, and we were so righteous that it
was to protect democracy.
We imported these Nazis afterwards, who are supposedly there's Nazi hunters to this day that will hunt down 100-year-old. Which, there was one guy recently here. I don't remember the details that he was at 100 or close to it. And I started reading about the evidence they had on him that he was an SS, guard or something. And I'm looking at the evidence, and I'm feeling like I'm watching the stuff that they have upon the people that went to January 6th. I'm like, I trust the people that are calling us Nazis now.
Yeah.
To go after Nazis when you guys, our own government, imported them through a secret operation.
At least 1,600 from their own admittance.
Right, and we know there's more. I don't know if we want to talk about the POWs.
We could probably brush on that at the end, but I was going to go back to JFK because I got onto this tack with John F. Kennedy, which I had no intention with looking at Operation Paperclip, but that SS Argentina kept coming up, and when it said that JFK was one of the noted passengers in this ship's history, I looked into that, and then I saw he had travels in Europe in 1937 to in between, in the summer between semesters of college, where he traveled extensively over Europe, and he had his little new convertible shipped over, and they traveled Europe. And his buddy Lim,
his close friend. I don't know if you guys know about JFK's buddy Lim. I didn't before it was brought to my attention. He was a very close friend, like with Obama.
He stayed in the White
Valerie
House.
Jarrett kind of close because he had his own room.
House.
He had his own room at the White House. A lot of people think there's more to that.
Yeah,
relationship.
And Lim was also the name of the module that landed on the moon in '69.
It's just a coincidence.
Lim, yeah. Because LEM is such a common moniker for things that you want, especially historic things.
I don't even know or have even heard anybody named Lim.
I hadn't before that.
Yeah.
But JFK, he traveled through Europe, and then he went to go, him and his brother, Joe Sr., went to work with his dad because he had just been appointed ambassador to England, I believe in 1937. He was there, and Roosevelt got kind of tired of him over several years because Joe Senior, Kennedy's dad, was big time Hitler guy. He liked everything that was about Hitler. So he was a good buddy of Roosevelt, but Roosevelt ended up sacking him. He couldn't have him because he was doing stuff, negotiations and stuff with German people and other countries without permission from even from the State Department and from Roosevelt.
Right.
But after that, you get into 39, and you look at 39. That's when Hitler invades Poland on September 1st. But JFK does another trip to Europe. He visits the Soviet Union, the Balkans, the Middle East, and Germany and Czechoslovakia, in over a couple of months. And then he goes back to England on the day that Hitler invades Poland. And I don't know what that means, but it just seems it's odd to me. His dad was Joe Senior was all for everything that the Nazi Party was about. And, I don't know how supposedly JFK didn't believe with that stuff, but why was he in the Soviet Union and Germany and the Balkans? The Balkans have been a flashpoint for a long time as well,
right.
going back to before World War I. So it's just another one of those things we don't know.
Right.
It was just curious. Why is he over, and why does he get to fly home? I mean, he goes home the day of the invasion. Did he?
Right. He goes home the day of the invasion of Poland.
September 1, 1939.
Did you already mention his thesis?
Oh, yeah. A big reason, I should have said that, the big reason for his visit to Soviet Union, Germany, Czechoslovakia, for all that, was his senior thesis at Harvard called something. I already forgot the name of it, but it was about Munich. It was a failure at Munich, basically. It was when the Allies, before the war started, they gave the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia to Hitler.
And I don't know.
Too bad Czechoslovakia didn't have much of it.
The appeasement at Munich. The appeasement. Yeah. I personally don't think he wrote that thesis.
He finishes this thesis in 40, I believe. And he, supposedly the story with this is, he wanted to keep it private because he had no ambitions whatsoever.
No.
And
Kennedy.
Oh yeah,
ambitions?
they also wrote a yearbook in high school, most likely to be president.
Of course.
So I mean, it all just lines up perfect.
Yeah, of course. This thesis don't have.
He wanted to keep this thesis private, and his dad, Joe Senior, convinced him that he needed to print it as a book.
He didn't want to keep anything.
And he printed it as a book, and it became a bestseller.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there were no strings pulled with that at all.
No. Yeah, they all have books written. What's his name? Obama's didn't he have 2 books by the time he
did? Oh, because the other one was
Dreams from a
Profiles in Courage.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because it brings up his amazing exploits in the Pacific during World War II. Because we know how he had health problems. He had colitis. He had back problems going back a long time. Right. And he's in the Pacific. Now, first of all, he wanted to go in the Army. They rejected him because of his health. He wanted to go in the Navy. He tried once. He didn't make it. He went and tried again. Of course, some strings were pulled.
Right.
Because it helps to have a wealthy man, politically oriented, that's been an ambassador for the U.S. to England too.
Right.
But he gets in the Navy. At first, he's like an attaché or something. He's an advisor or something in D.C. But then he volunteers for PT boat duty, which is or TP. It's torpedo boats.
Yeah.
And he's in the Pacific, and he's out one night on a moonless night. It's really dark, and he sees the vessel. He's going to go after it, and out of the blue, a Japanese destroyer hits them and basically cuts the PT boat in half, and it sinks. And so him and his men the story says that he asked his men, are we going to surrender or do we want to just fight? And they're floating in the water.
Right.
And so they're not going to surrender. So they decide to try to survive in the Pacific Ocean, and they swim. He has to pull. Now he's re-injured his back in this collision.
Right.
He has to pull one of his shipmates. He commands this boat. He has to pull one of his shipmates by a life preserver and part of it he has clenched in his teeth. And he swims for, it's like 3 miles. And they find this little island. And then him and some of them, they realize that this island, there's not water, there's not stuff to survive. They swim to another island that's 3 to 5 miles away. And dude, I can't swim a quarter mile. Swimming is hard.
Yeah.
No matter what kind of
Some
shape.
serious cardio. I mean,
and this one was supposedly against currents as well.
Right.
So we just
a lot of these war stories they create are like John McCain, John
H.W.
Kerry,
Bush.
A lot of them. There's no way we can know whether what they say happened. But come on, you look at these men, and when you really look into what it would have taken for these feats to have taken place, I think that they're just part of these.
After you had swum to the first island, you would be spent for a while. And then when you get there, there's no water, so you can't even replenish, and your reserves go down even more while you try to get some sleep too, I'm sure.
Right.
So we're
questioning.
I don't know what that is, but the official story to me is
and it can
bullshit.
be that story actually happened, but it wasn't Kennedy as the hero. It was some other dude because there are a lot of men that can accomplish serious feats like that. I don't buy it.
And then he healed himself after this incident when they finally got picked up, and he healed himself and took over another boat, and then he got promoted to he was a first lieutenant, then he got promoted to full lieutenant.
Oh yeah, George Bush, had the mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Oh, hey Leonard's in here.
Yeah, he started following us a couple months ago.
And John Kerry. Yeah, John Kerry. The swift boat vets. I'm thankful for the swift boat vets because they pretty much sank John Kerry's chances. Not that it would have mattered. John Kerry, George Bush. I mean, George Bush was a warmonger, so I'm looking at that in a different light too. But I just know that the narratives and the stories created around these guys to make them look like legends, I just don't buy it anymore.
Yeah, biographies are.
There was a book written about George Bush Sr. called Flyboys.
Yeah.
And that was a World War II story. Because he was
shot down in the Pacific. He was a carrier.
And there was
pilot.
there was 7 people, and he was the only survivor.
Yeah.
So we get this story from him and whoever was behind him. I don't buy it. They're lying. They're lying to you now. They're lying to you about history. All we really know is that they lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, we can talk about a few leaders that we know of who have Nazi ancestors.
Who don't have, if the thing today is we gotta identify all the Nazis. There's one. There's one going up my stairs.
Right.
If we got to identify Nazis, let's look at some of the people that people from both sides have revered. And I voted for George H.W. Bush. I voted for Bush twice.
Yeah.
And now I don't, it's not like I regret the votes, but I'm looking back going, you know what? I don't know what it mattered.
Right.
But let's look at George W. Bush's granddad.
Yeah.
And we brought him up before. Prescott Bush.
I mean, that was his granddad.
Yeah.
He didn't ever disavow his granddad.
Hell no.
And his granddad, Prescott, funded.
But nobody points it out.
him.
And here's the thing: as we found that looking at Prescott Bush, it did come up in George Bush's first campaign in 2000.
Yeah.
Came up a little bit.
Right.
But the media, it looked like the media was trying to pound him and tear him up.
It's just part of the act.
It seemed like this would have been a good way to do it, and they mentioned it, but they didn't go after this. Prescott Bush was one of the main funders of Hitler's rearmament.
Right.
He was actually turned out. Him and Roosevelt became enemies because he was trying to take power from Roosevelt.
Right.
I don't think it was a battle of good versus evil.
Right.
I think it was two evil men fighting for who in the world was going to be holding the power. I think that Prescott Bush was a Hitler man, and Roosevelt was a Stalin man. Right. And they had differing ideas of what totalitarian was going to win World War II.
Yeah.
And so he was divested of assets. He had assets seized in like 42, 43 or something, because he was still in the middle of the war pushing for the
And then
Nazi
his grandson
side.
goes on to be president of America.
And this media that hated him so much.
Mm-hmm. They love him now.
They didn't harp on that at all. It was like they knew in the future they were going to have him on their
They
side.
called Bush Hitler.
Yeah,
they
called
hated him,
Hitler.
and now he's best buds with the
But
Obamas.
they could have nailed him with his granddad. And come to think, when you go back to when Reagan finished up his term and George H.W. ran,
right?
They could have hammered
H.W.
Who were they one?
Because that was his dad.
Who did Bush beat in '88? I always forget. I'm always like brain fart on that.
Was it not Mondale?
It was Mondale and
Geraldine Ferraro.
Ferraro. Because it was the first women. You know what? That reminds me. They said it was historic that Kamala was the vice presidential nominee.
Right.
There was already a female.
There was a female.
A first female vice president.
Candidate, not
a
VP.
vice president.
Who was it that you said predicted?
Oh, Gerald Ford. I saw something. It was Pockets of the Future. He's a great channel on YouTube to follow.
Oh, yeah. Kathy says, Bush lied, people died. Remember, that was the general betray us. All that's gone now.
But the thing is, they're all assholes.
Right.
The ones calling them Hitler and the ones saying
they're not. And at this time, they do the DC2 stuff where you have the left and the right and the media feeding us, the right what we need and the left what we need. And then 5-10 years later, they're embracing the people.
Yeah. As long as they say, McCain.
Yeah.
He was a darling, and then he ran against Obama, and then he was not a darling again. Right. And then he was a darling again.
Right. All right. It's getting old. And then, let me go to, Christia, I don't know how to say it. Christia.
I can't remember how to say it.
Christia Freeland. She's a prime minister.
She's Canadian.
In Canada. Her maternal grandfather was a Nazi. Okay, here. So why is this Canadian former minister proud of her family's Nazi past? She blames Russian disinformation for her grandfather's Nazi editorials that describe Poland as infected with Jews. That was her maternal grandfather.
Yeah.
Angela Merkel.
She doesn't get hit for that either.
No, she gets a pass.
It's like you're going to accuse somebody of being Nazi because they support somebody, and they haven't actually experimented on people or invaded other countries. But the people who have ancestors who actually did all that shit, they don't bring it up.
Well, they always accuse you of that which you're guilty, and that's one of the things. That's why they're calling us, Trump supporters, Nazis right now. It's what they are. But Angela Merkel, what is she? The president of Germany or I don't know.
She's the chancellor.
Her father, technically he wasn't part of the Stasi. He was a Protestant priest, and at the time, when everybody was fleeing East Germany, going to West Germany, he left West Germany to go to East Germany, and he was well compensated for being there. He had like 2 cars at a time when most people were on a waiting list to even get one. So those Stasi roots.
It reminds me, there's another German chancellor named Gerhard Schroeder.
Yeah.
90s and 2000s. I don't know if he was 90s, but I think he was before Merkel, the one. There may have been one in between. But you know what he did when he left? He went to, I think it's to work for Gazprom, which is the Russian natural gas conglomerate. So he's done really well since.
Yeah.
He's probably in his own private hell because of who he works for. But.
Right. So, these people, I'm not even gonna say they come from fascist or Nazi, like it's
that's just a veil to keep people divided.
Yeah.
That's just like a story.
It's just these controlling families come from a long line of which we think goes all the way back to Rome and maybe back to Babylon. And then there's I had Werner von Braun down there. We talked about him earlier. Arnold Schwarzenegger came out recently and said, "Screw your freedoms, get the vaccine." And his father was a literal brown shirt. He was a thug. What's his name? His name was Gustav. I had him up here. Now I can't find it. I might have gotten rid of the thing. But
Mr. Get to the Chopper. He his granddad, you said, or father?
It was his father.
Father was a brown shirt. Now maybe they're giving him a little bit of a pass because I think Hitler turned on the brown shirts
Right.
kind of early because they were too thuggish, and he wanted to polish up his image a little bit. So,
but for
Night
him
of the Long Knives.
Yeah, for him to say something like "screw your freedoms," well,
that's in line with his character, probably.
Right. And I'm sure there's more. Those are the only ones that I wrote down. But if you start tracing the lineage, a lot of these leaders, okay, you'll have the famous people will have a Wikipedia page. The people that are, I want to say, at the top of the big club, a lot
of them don't. There won't be. And we've talked.
They may not even have a Wikipedia page at all.
Yeah.
And if they do, there will be very little about their lineage. Very little.
And Wikipedia is not a good source, but
no.
You look into Proverbs and God says pray for wisdom, but you also want to pray for discernment. So
right.
I'm starting to, and I'm not by any means any kind of professional, but I'm starting to read some of these articles that I see on the internet and see like they'll be bragging, but telling on themselves at the same time if you read it in the right way, if you see it.
Right.
And kind of step back out of the the little box we've been in for so long.
Built for us that's kind of cracking.
I wanted to mention this holding company.
Chancellor.
Yeah, Chancellor Merkel.
Yeah.
But I want to mention this holding company because remember one of the early incentives to get the jab was to get a free donut.
And that's another thing that we did our last scope last month, and if you haven't seen it, you need to go back and watch it. It's on words. I forget, Sticks and Stones is what we title it, but it was about words and how words cast spells, and they choose words very deliberatively. Very, it's not an accident. And jab early on, we never talked about getting the flu jab. You got the flu shot, or you didn't, and now jab.
Get the jab.
It's everywhere.
Get the jab.
And
so one of the early incentives was Dunkin' Donuts offered free donut if you show that you had just gotten the jab.
Right.
And Owen Benjamin found this.
Right.
And it's a big holding company out of Germany. They're
based JAB.
They're based in Luxembourg. So Jab Holdings. And I don't know if you guys can see, it's kind of small. It has to be small because there's so many.
Can you see it, Kathy or Leonard? Let us know in the comments.
They own Keurig. They own Dunkin' Donuts. They own Panera Bread. They own Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
They used to own the fragrance brands of Beyonce and
a lot of people.
David Beckham.
Yeah.
And other folks.
Jimmy Choo.
Yeah, and they have all and this is not everything that they kind of have control.
It's just a small.
And I look at it more. The company itself, Jab Holdings, only employs about 50 people, professionals.
Right.
And so they run all these companies from this place
Leonard.
in Luxembourg. And just
Yeah.
And this company is the Ryman family, and they started in the 1800s as a chemical and an engineering firm, and that's what most of your pharmaceutical companies now. Their early iterations were chemical companies,
right?
Which tells you a lot too. And the Ryman family, when you look at Ryman Senior, Ryman Junior, it broke in 2019 that this family, these two men, were huge Adolf Hitler and Nazi Party supporters in Germany. And when that hit, it took them 2 months, but then 2 months later, they told the New York Times that, oh yeah, well, but our mom's granddad got sent to a ghetto, and we don't know what happened. He might have been sent to Sobibor or something. But it took them 2 months to come up with but we're victims too. And then they labeled their private foundation after Lindecker or something like that. Yeah. They named it after the granddad. Now, if they knew this history about this man who had been, this happened in 2019.
Right.
So this man was sent sometime in the 40s to this ghetto. So this foundation was not renamed in his honor until the story broke that they were not sympathizers. So another story told.
Right. And that was before pandemic was breaking out, and New York Times did the article where Jab Holdings having to account for their Nazi past.
Yeah.
Jab,
And so,
G-A-B,
again,
the
you
word,
get
the term that just like defining this vaccine. It's just.
But meanwhile, on Twitter today, we have people calling my sister a Nazi,
Right.
but not Nazis. They don't
Right.
call Nazis Nazis.
Right.
And so it's word games and stupid and juvenile. And I'm glad I drive a truck during the week, and I kind of miss out on a lot of it.
Right.
And for you guys, we mentioned Pockets of the Future earlier, I think, is that he's another good YouTube follow, is that the only time I see political stuff or Joe Biden speeches is when I watch him covering them, and it's kind of a relief because he's.
Yeah, I watch the news less and less because it all just feels so scripted. Kathy says, funny how Angela Merkel was the leader of the opposition party from 2002 to 2007 and led the Christian Democrat Party, LMAO, after that. Yeah, they're all using us and lying. Yeah.
And that's the thing, Christian Democrat Party, and like Germany, their parliamentary system, they have a lot of different parties, and the Greens, and I think they have different Green parties.
Yeah.
Too, and it's like Christian Democrat. I'm like, yeah.
Right.
You've got a label on yourself to try to grab some people that don't even think about anything, and then they go from there.
All right.
Because they're neither a Christian nor Democrat.
Yeah. And so from that, we'll go on to something else I just kind of stumbled upon while I was researching all this. I did not know this before a few days ago, but during the Holocaust, there was an epidemic of typhus, and I stumbled upon a National Institutes for Health article, and it was called "Murderous Medicine: Nazi Doctors, Human Experimentation, and Typhus." So let me just read this first sentence. In Murderous Medicine, Naomi Baumslag documents the complicity of Nazi doctors and pharmaceutical companies in murderous medical experiments related to epidemic typhus to further Jewish genocide. Now, so what a lot of these Jews that went into the gas chambers believed they were being treated for typhus.
And sometimes it was like for lice or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes they thought when they got on the train to go to the camp,
right,
in the first place, that they were being sent to a place. Just like American Federal Health Service treated Tuskegee people for syphilis when they're actually.
And they called it bad blood.
Yeah.
And it was free healthcare.
Yeah. And it wasn't healthcare. It was saline shots. And they were just watching to see how sick they got and how bad their brains got.
Right. So
till 72.
Right. It's 40 years. So I just want you to take this under consideration while you're hearing, how they're trying to do the vaccine ID passport. They're trying to mandate vaccines, and quarantine camps or gulags are popping up in Australia. So with that in mind, listen to this. It shows, for example, how Nazi officials used typhus prevention as a convenient strategy to deceive inmates into believing they were being treated, in fact, when they were being gassed. Jews were labeled disease carriers and a public health risk to justify the creation of ghettos, quarantine camps. Mm-hmm. Containing typhus epidemics provided a rationale for quarantine, ghettoization, and delousing baths or disinfection. Delousing baths were camouflage for gas chambers. So how about a pandemic or an epidemic is the perfect cover for genocide?
And then the people that got upset with Yvonne today was posting that I can see how the Holocaust happened.
Because I was commenting on the quarantine camps that were going up in Australia. They're there to help you and protect you from
a bunch
COVID.
of people jumped on her and saying they were reporting her and all this stuff.
And then I was anti-Semitic, which I never even mentioned the Jews.
Why is it over and over again that you can never, and she wasn't even criticizing or comparing or anything. She was just saying, I can see how people would succumb to this stuff. And then people light up and they get upset and they go, you can't talk about the Holocaust. You have to talk about the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, a certain way.
Right.
And, going into the 40s, so Germany doesn't start the physical war till 39. Before 1939, millions of people more had already died in the Ukraine Nobody gave a shit.
Right.
Millions had died in Turkey, Armenians and Muslims,
Nobody
during World
gave a
War
crap.
One and after World War One. Nobody gave a shit. So why is it that when you say that, why is that when you say Holocaust, it's that?
Like
it's bad. We're not saying it's not bad.
But if
We're
I
just
had
saying,
talked today about the Mao's genocide,
oh my
I'd have
God.
never had those trolls in my mentions.
No.
Um,
If you compared it to Red China, you would have had no problems.
Right. Kathy says Ohio held $1 million weekly lottery for jab and free scholarships. And H1N1 was indiscriminate. And kids, everyone got it. No one did a thing. Our immune system fixed that. Yeah, Kathy says Black Americans are brilliant. Follow their lead. They're like the lowest. They have the lowest vaccination rates. And if you go on redpillsentinel.com and read my article on the other experiments, you'll learn that, it's fresh in their mind.
But you know who has the what I've heard so far, the country that has the lowest vaccination rates is Afghanistan.
Yeah, where's the pandemic in Afghanistan?
But where is the talk about how unsafe they're being?
Right.
And if we're worried about the Taliban,
so if you
why don't we just wait?
If you think of COVID as the tool, and they're telling you get the jab, get the jab, get the jab. You go back and you look at the Holocaust. We don't know the half of any historical story that they have told us so far. So when you go and you read stories like this on the National Institute of Health, you can see how they
me and
are
Yvonne
doing the
have been
same
history buffs, and my especially been a history buff for a long time. I read it for fun. I love it, all kinds.
Me too.
And I'm learning that I don't realize the half of it.
I have read so many books on the Holocaust. I've read books that, this Harvard dude wrote for his thesis. It's like a book that's thick. It took me like a month. And I never heard anything about, it was called Hitler's Willing Executioners.
Yeah.
And it was just about how the average German helped contribute to. But this is the first time I've ever heard about the typhus epidemic.
Yeah.
And there being a cover for treatment.
We used to cover the media.
The gas chambers.
We used to cover the media a lot before. And one of the things we've always recognized, or we've recognized since then, is that one of the media's most powerful tools is omission.
Right.
What they leave out.
Right.
And there's ways to find it. And I truly believe that when the world we're in is run by the devil, God is in overall control of everything.
Right.
But we have free will, and we have things. We can control things.
And the devil doesn't have any power. He has influence over you. You can abdicate that, give that power. We have all the power.
And our history is designed to make us think we don't have the power.
Right.
And it's like a lot of folks in this world believe that Napoleon said history is a lie agreed upon. And going with that Satan is in control of the world part, which we're supposed to be in the world, not of it.
Right.
He gets you to, man, I keep losing my point, but I think there are ultimate rules because God is in overall control.
Right.
And that they have to tell us in some way. And they're not overt.
That's why
time.
You see it.
They have to be when we're us out here in the world, we have free will. Well, we have to have true options. And it's not just black and white either.
And you have to have discernment.
I mean, at the very base, it's good or evil, and discernment. But in the end, these guys, they have influence, but they have certain rules they have to play by. And that's why it's hard to find sometimes, but you can see the truth. And if you can use your logic and your discernment and pray for that.
Right.
I pray for it often because I'm like, I know I'm not seeing something or I'm reading this wrong.
Right. And that truth is like they say, hidden. It's not. It's not hidden in plain sight. It's in plain sight. Just like the Hippocratic.
We had veils.
The Hippocratic oath says, "First, do no harm." Okay, but what comes after "first, do no harm"? I sent out a tweet earlier, and a lot of people seem to like it. So I said, "First, do no harm, gain their trust, and then second, harm them." It's called the Hippocratic Oath. What is hypocrisy?
Hypocrisy.
It's like right there in your face. So You wonder
And
how can they sleep at night when you say first do no harm? Okay, first you do no harm, and then they kill you.
Because they're going, we told you.
We told you.
You just got to know what words mean. We told you. You agreed to it.
And that's the one thing that whenever we start delving into a subject, we start finding that it's not hidden at all.
Mm-mm.
It's there for you to find it. And they've trained us all to just be brainwashed.
You got to listen to an expert of this on. I'm like, who made him an expert? Did he go to expert school of dissecting Afghanistan problems? He went to an expert. I mean, and then look at it too. Some of these guys are guys that were in Afghanistan and risen to high rank and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm looking over there and you fucked up Afghanistan, so you're an expert on it.
Right.
I'm like, I'm gonna start reading some stuff from the 1800s about Afghanistan.
How many healthcare people die from health mistakes by doctors? 250,000.
Well, I was going to say that, and that's on the CDC's website. The third leading cause of death are health mistakes, and that's the admitted.
That's what they're saying. It might be the first. I don't know.
It might be like there's 32, but one is way up here, and it's medical mistakes.
Right. It's just interesting wearing masks on their heads. Yeah. Kathy says on the mental health facilities where they perform lobotomies on people who were just filled with fear porn. Sound familiar? They were afraid of the Russian bomb coming. Yeah, and what's the common tool they use to get you in that state of submission? It's fear.
Fear.
They have us all afraid.
And it's even low-grade fear. It's like, oh my God, this guy's going to stop me at the door.
Yeah. People
and
are
just walk confident and just.
And a lot of people don't want to wear that mask, but they're afraid to rock the boat and they don't want to be put on the spot. And I'm like, okay, is that America, home of the free, land of the brave? You just don't want to rock the boat. Well, it's time we rock the boat, and that doesn't mean take up arms, or it just means live like you want to be free.
Live like God made you.
So we're about to wrap up here, but I'm going to finish with these prisoner of war camps. But right before we went live, I had remembered this. There was a prisoner of war camp that was up, we think, in New
the
Jersey,
Northeast somewhere,
that we had stumbled upon on one of our other videos. That had, I think they had like 2,000. I can't remember the number. It was something like 2,000. And when Lou and I started looking into it, it was a lot more. It ended up being 4,000. And then I thought, there's probably a lot more.
Yeah.
And we were just confused because why would you? We've got our men overseas.
And here, look at the chronology of this, is that we're bringing prisoners of war, Nazi prisoners of war, from Europe and North Africa to the U.S. starting at 42.
All right.
Now, 42 is we're getting geared up strong. We're starting our island hopping in the Pacific. We're going to invade North Africa. We already have invaded North Africa. We're soon going to go into Sicily. We're going to be doing the buildup in England for the Normandy invasion in 44. And so we have all these ships that have to be supplied and doing all this stuff, but we also have time to bring thousands of troops from Europe to the U.S. Now, knowing that we've sent a bunch of men overseas because we're drafted, we got all these men signed up, we're sending millions of men to the two theaters
Japan,
of war,
all over the world
to fight.
really.
And so why not keep them where we've already got a bunch of freaking soldiers to guard them?
Right. But no, we bring them over here. So I was trying to find out and have that page up before we went live, and I couldn't find it. But what I stumbled upon was a list of World War II prisoner of war camps in the United States. And if you Google that and pull up the Wikipedia page,
because we're still there.
It's a list a mile long. It's in every state. It's in several cities in every state. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it wasn't just that one facility up in New Jersey. They had these all over the place, and why would they do that? And then you start reading the details or the notes about them.
Oh, I got it right here.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm going to share this. Let's see.
It blew my mind. It doesn't make sense.
And she was reading extensively about the ones in Louisiana.
Yeah, that was at Camp Ruston, I think, and they had like 4,000. And get this, they took the land by eminent domain to even create the camp, and they promised the owners they would return it when they were done. Well, it's America. They did what they did to the Afghanis. We'll protect you, and then they just leave them behind.
So you guys should be able to see this now. Why have I never learned about this?
The first one listed, Bainbridge Army Airfield, originally an Army airfield flight training facility, also housed several hundred German POWs who worked in nearby agricultural farms. Following World War II, the facilities became the state hospital. Anyway, so they housed them and they worked in nearby agricultural farms. So when we sent all of our men off to war, it created a shortage of farm workers. And so we had to replace them. You know how we have this shortage of farm workers now because we're paying people not to work, and we're bringing
now we have to bring
South America over to work on the farms.
At its peak in May 1945, a total of 425,871 POWs were held in the U.S., including 371,000 Germans, 50,000 Italians, and 3,900 Japanese.
And do we really think we sent them all back to where they came from?
But look at now watch when we scroll this list, it just goes, and it's
all over.
It's in Oregon. It's in almost every state.
They had some attendant. They got Arkansas. This one had 10,000 Germans in Indiana.
And we'll mention that Indiana, in the during the Tuskegee experiments, had a prison that they did the syphilis experiments on as well.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't just Tuskegee; it was also Guatemala. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. That's the one you were talking about.
Yeah.
Camp Belle Meade. Almost sounds like a plantation, but it's in Jersey.
Keep going. There was some more interesting ones on down.
Upwards of Venice.
So this one in Camp Campbell, Kentucky, was one of the first 3 designated camps for anti-Nazis. So I have a question about that. Why?
So I'm wondering what that.
Were we housing I thought that the Nazis were the bad ones, and there were a lot of Germans who weren't happy with what was going on. And if you were anti-Nazi, I thought that was a good thing. So, what's that about? Camp Clinton in Mississippi housed POWs from the Africa Corps after their
defeat in North Africa.
Yeah, finally surrendered. He was the last.
I mean, there's a whole rabbit hole here with POW camps in the U.S. How many of you guys and future viewers of this show, how many of you guys know that we had
German prisoners of war
all over the United States? 2 escaped, used a railroad boxcar.
Camp Florence, Arizona was the largest all-new prisoner of war camp compound ever constructed on American soil.
Huh.
I'll have to look into that. But so these guys in Camp Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, they harvested peas on local farms and worked in canneries.
Which is what our boys should have been doing.
They told us
not going to war.
They told us, I don't know about you guys, you tell me. They told us that women filled the role of men when they left.
Yeah.
Remember? There were Leonard says there were 11 in Tennessee. Wow. There were 356,000 POW held in the U.S. Yeah. There was one that was real interesting to me.
Well, there was the one with near Roswell in New Mexico.
Yeah, there was a Camp Roswell. One of the first segregation.
Here's another one. Contract work in farms and canneries, mills and tanneries.
600 Germans.
Wisconsin. This one held 5,000 in Maryland.
That's a lot.
And see, here's the thing we were wondering about was one of the first segregation camps. We were like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
In Huntsville, Texas.
This is probably a rabbit hole on its own. Italians and Germans. Go down to
this Werner guy was escaped and recaptured in Mexico City in 54.
So they went to Mexico.
So they went. This guy escaped Las Cruces, and in 54, what did they have to do to get? Why did they have to have this guy?
Why did they care? Oh, I went the wrong way.
Yours is opposite.
Yeah. Keep going down here.
One of the first 3. That's a long way. Another anti-Nazi.
Yeah.
More anti-Nazi camps in Mississippi and Massachusetts.
Right. on site of Will Rogers World
Oh,
Airport.
fortuitously located outside a city where many locals still spoke German. The camp buildings were preserved in Flandreau State Park and are
Many
available for rent as a
locals
group center.
Still spoke German?
Well, because we, especially Minnesota, Wisconsin, big
Okay.
German
Yeah.
immigrant population. Will Rogers Airport now.
I want to get to that one about the suicides.
Oh, yeah.
That was the Africa Corps.
Operation Torch was Africa.
Well, look at this one. This one had 9 branch camps, capacity for 4,800,
At the main camp.
ranging from Italian, Yugoslavia, Chechen, Russian conscripts.
The anti-Nazi camp, where many intellectuals, artists, writers were among the POWs. Oh, and the U-505 crew again.
Yeah. So, Sheboygan. I'm trying to finish this up. I know this may not be as interesting to y'all as it is to us, but there was one I'm trying to get to that involved an accident of like
1,000 Japanese Americans. Oh yeah, the accident.
they killed like 16 people. They don't what kind of accident kills 16 people?
After the war was over too.
Yeah, keep going. We may not find it.
They were almost on the core. Oh, there's the Southern Methodist University one.
It's none of those. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I'll see it because I remember it was end of. There's the riot by Negro. So
Yeah.
there's.
Courtney, I keep going. It's none of those. Oh well. Anyway, it was
like 16 men.
16 men. They died. What they said was in an accident. They were Germans.
And it was like.
Oh, there it is. This is Michigan.
26.
Fort Custer. 16 of the men were killed or died as a result of an accident on October 30, on Halloween.
On Halloween,
Just
1945.
an accident. Like, what the hell is that about?
So is that where we get the movie Halloween? One of them?
Yeah.
It was a Michigan National Guard training facility. Oh, it is now.
Yeah. We might have to delve into
History.
that to see if there's anything there, but.
Oh, it was also a facility to train troops for the polar bear expedition as part of the Allied intervention in the Russian Civil War
What in the world?
in 1917.
This
Man, you could just go forever.
I know. One rabbit hole leads you to another, and it just. Are we back on camera?
Oh, I thought I hit it. Here we go.
One thing leads you to another. It's just interesting. So with all those POW camps and those hundreds of thousands of Nazis, and some of them were anti-Nazis, I'd love to know what that means. A lot of those didn't go back.
I'm like, there were some wishy-washy guys. It's like, I'm thinking a lot of people become anti-Nazi after you get captured.
Right. Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, I hate those guys.
Right. So it's just something to continue looking into and challenging and questioning, because everything they've told us is a lie. And as they call us the Nazis, just remember they always call you that which they are guilty.
And I wouldn't even get too far into it. And we responded a couple of times today, and then we just started blocking because I don't.
Their minds are made up. We're not going to change
They're
anybody's.
toxic. We're not going to change them.
They're just trying to report me to get me blocked, banned.
Remember, we'd stopped doing it, but early on in our broadcast, we'd always say at the end, remember the 24-hour rule, the 48-hour rule, and stop. And what I would say now is just stop watching. Period. When you see news, don't watch news.
Right.
We used to say, wait 24 hours or the 48 hours for the walk back or the revision to the story, but now it's like even the revision's going to be screwed up. So just don't watch the news.
Everything is so scripted, and with Joe Biden, and as horrible as that press conference was, it's just like Laura Logan said about Afghanistan and what's going on. It's not incompetent. It's what they meant to happen. Did they know Joe Biden was going to go in that press conference and it was going to be a clown show? Yes, they knew that, and they did that on purpose. Did that when you hear the news that Joe Biden gave the Taliban a list of Americans' names, and that's intentional, because these people are in control of the media. If they don't want you to know something, you're not going to know it. They're not going to put it out there. So it's all scripted. So, you know, you can
Not
watch.
even scripted maybe, but just the gist of it. It's like the same. They have a certain
It's theater.
story they want to get across, and they're probably ad-libbing constantly too because it's so quick and moving.
And they can change what happened even at today's press conference by just rewriting history. So I'm just
Joe Biden does it in the middle of the middle of the press conference. Goes, I didn't say that.
Or he put his head down in his hands, and I'm like, yeah, that's how we're all kind of feeling.
But I would treat it if you do choose to watch any kind of news, and I don't care where it's from, just start seeing it as the new Saturday Night Live or something, and maybe the quality is better than actual Saturday Night Live. So
Yeah, I mean, today's press
see
conference.
it as a comedy show. And,
Well, it would be pretty funny if lives weren't at stake in Afghanistan. But truthfully, we're not over there. I can't tell you for sure what's going on in Afghanistan.
No.
We're at the mercy of those feeding us information. So be leery of
we have a screen, and somebody over there has a screen.
the
and
horror
they're doing
stories
this.
you're about to be fed,
Yeah.
the blood, because remember, these same people block us from seeing pictures of people supposedly jumping up from the towers.
Yeah.
You can't see those. You can't see those.
Just
so
the one.
Just the one
Just
with
the
that
one.
one picture. So when you see the bloodshed and those and all the news media is putting those pictures before you, just know that they want you to see that for a reason.
Well, and if you start seeing pictures of gory details and blood on bandages and stuff, I would say look at old Clint Eastwood movies and compare the blood colors too, because it's probably pretty close.
Yeah. So I'm not saying slaughter won't go on. I'm just saying we have no way of knowing, which is why we should be focusing on ourselves, our communities,
Yeah.
our families, because you can't go wrong there.
But it's harder here because instead of a screen, you got to deal with somebody's personality. So,
Real life. Yeah.
but pray about that too, and
Yeah.
kind of think of look at yourself and just try to be better.
Yeah. It's
And that would be a build back better than what they're talking about.
we should build that better. That's what we should do.
Yeah. And it starts internally, and then it goes out to your immediate.
And everything
family
they do is to distract you from looking internally. So anyway, we thank you guys for tuning in. And if you liked this, please share it. And we'll be back next month, perhaps on the Ides, perhaps not.
We'll
But
see.
we will be here. Thanks.
Thank you guys.